Hi YouTubers, this is Chris Composer. This is episode number 5, and you know what? I'm going to a jam, and I'm bringing this guy with me. So let's get started. As an amateur performer, from time to time I go to these jams, and we're a bunch of musicians, just singers, people that are interested to experience the music stuff. It's nothing huge, but it is educational and it's fun. So in these jams, what I usually do is I bring equipment that I can, put on an aircraft and basically go there and try to keep the cost down. So usually I travel very minimally, so I have just my keyboard, and I have this cool setup that I have for my MODX typically, that the actual stand is incorporated inside the case, which is kind of cool. I had some ups and downs with cases. They get destroyed a little bit in the plane, but the airlines that I use were pretty cool about fixing certain things. I deal with Air Canada sometimes, or WestJet, and so that. So in this case here, in this particular situation, I'm going to Toronto, which is it's about a 5-hour drive for me, so I am not limited by equipment. So I have a tendency of bringing too much stuff that I don't need. So one of the things I usually bring is I try to bring equipment that is at a minimal. So typically I'll bring my MODX, a music stand. I'm going to show you the music stand. It's pretty cool. It's usually this little guy. And this is, believe it or not, I believe for an Xbox, you buy a little stand and it comes with, it's for the Xbox or whatever, play keyboard. And I saw this stand and I said, this is so slick because it'll fit my keyboards on it perfectly. So what I had to do is modify it by adding these little bars of metal. And I was able to get good stability. And at the same time, this whole thing comes apart and fits in the case. So I'm going to show you that later on, and you'll see it's pretty cool. Now, is it a super stable stand? Well, it's not bad because it's the same concept as this guy. If you look at the stand, the ultimate stand, the kind of support infrastructure where you have a specifically angled bar, and then you have like a T connection here. Well, if you look at this guy, it's kind of the same concept. So you do get stability to a certain point. So it is at minimal, it can handle a keyboard of that size or this size. However, in my situation, I'm going to bring the stand to have the keyboard in my room to practice on. In fact, I'm bringing 2 keyboards. I'm going to be bringing the MODX, and I'll be bringing the CK61. I've decided I'm going to use the CK61 for stage use for now. Maybe I'll change my mind. And then the MODX I'll have as a backup, but also in my room to use to practice. So the first thing I'm going to do, sort out the equipment I'm going to be bringing. You're about to go to a jam or some amateur thing, or maybe a gig, maybe even. And then you look at your stuff and you're thinking to yourself, okay, what do I need? Do I need more stuff? So let's have a look and see what I can do. So I'm using a Jeep. I'll be bringing my equipment with me this time around. I will not be flying. Usually when I fly, I basically use this guy right there, this case, and I try to keep everything as condensed as possible. I rely on the location that I'm going to be at to see if they have the proper PA equipment. Usually we do, because we all pitch in and they rent some good stuff. And so the cables and mic stands, they even have mics, but I use my own. All right, as you can see, there's a lot of equipment here. I decided to use this particular case, a Gator case that I've had for a while, for the CK61. If I were you, I'm not sponsoring Gator in any way. I bought a case for an MX49, which was this one, but I realized that the internal dimensions seem to be able to fit the CK61 and the MX61. I had to make some modifications inside, so therefore I suggest you go to their website and get the right case for the keyboard. And I'm going to have it posted right here, the right number for the case for the CK61 for you. So on that note, this is it. So I'm going to be using this, and that's for the CK61. And we're going to be using this particular case over here for the MODX that I'm bringing. And I'm going to be taking this guy apart and putting it in here. I'm also bringing 2 monitors because I can. Am I going to use them? Probably not. They're renting a lot of equipment, but I've got burned before. When you're playing, you can't even hear yourself. And when I'm singing, if you can't hear yourself, you have a tendency to strain your vocals. So that's it for that. I have another case that I have, which I use predominantly for the cables. So I guess it's time to pack up, get ready for that jam. So I guess, how do I travel with the CK61? First things first, I want to take out the USB key. You do not want to ship your keyboard with your USB key inside the keyboard, because you may have an unexpected surprise. So I'll put that in my pocket for now. So put that over here for now. I decided to use my old Gator case. Well, there's nothing really old about it except it's a couple of years old, but they are really good cases. And I have an older version here from Gator that wasn't so good, and they don't produce these anymore because with my experience, I broke every single corner. Put them on a plane. I don't know what happens in a plane, but I busted the corners and I had to do some plastic welding. It's too bad I don't have a video of that. I spent a good week and I redid the whole thing. So I'm going to use this as a platform. And cool thing is, this is pretty light. You can carry it around. It's actually heavier than the keyboard itself. So this guy here has to go in here. So what I did was, I took a standard case. I made the modifications for another keyboard. So, of course, I'm bringing a pedal. This one's an M Audio pedal for the keyboard. The power supply for the keyboard. And it's always a good idea to have 2, because, you know, these things go missing most times than not. And I don't know what this is. I think this is my backup key. I had to do some modifications a little bit, and I'll show you what I did. So I'm going to put the keyboard in and we'll get back. Okay, so we got the keyboard, and I'm going to put it into position. I'm going to slide it right in. And I had to add a foam with Velcro, and this foam comes with the keyboard case. And I chopped them up. And they're made to be chopped up because, you know, you got to make sure that your keyboard is in a safe spot when it's being, you know, thrown around. And I put this little foam here that I got from packing from something else, just so the keyboard stays pretty much still. What I also did was I aligned Velcro foam so that it comes right down and puts pressure right here. And the same would get this one that put pressure right here. So this way, the keyboard does not move. The only issue I find with this, I'm not sure if I have any room for the patch cords. But I do have room for the power supply, which I put over here. And I put, believe it or not, because it has a rubber piece to it in the front here, as an extra support, but really just for packing it. And I just jam it in there like that. So there you go. And then you close this bad boy like that. And these are really quick clips. And it does have a TSA approved lock. So I usually lock this sucker up. And if they want to inspect, if TSA or any board or agency wants to have a look inside, they can open it. And basically, you're good to go. Now, one thing things that I do with the keyboards, usually in their cases. Because this is my first time that I'm actually going to a jam with this particular case and the keyboard inside it, I usually have stickers on the thing depending where I go. I did get some professional decals done for Yamaha, and you might think I'm trying to advertise Yamaha, but really, in fact, the last time I traveled with this thing, I had put my own lettering, and I put lettering that was, for me, understandable. I was like KC, and I put some numbers, and I went to a dollar store and I got decals that you glued on, similar to this, but not as good as this though. And what I didn't realize is that the decals were military font. I didn't know that. And so I put those things on, and when I went through customs, they were really questioning me about the case. I believe in security, and I think that the person had every right to ask questions. That's it right there. So now that it's packed up, now I've got cables right there, and I'm probably going to put them in this case. Now, I bought this case from a thrift store. You know, you got to improvise. Sometimes you got to do things what you got, you know, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I bought it, and it had pre-set up things. I think maybe it was for lighting or maybe equipment. So I took all the walls down, redid the foam really quickly, and then I use it now to put my gear. So speaking of gear, there's one thing I want to show you that's pretty important for you jammers out there. These are adapters, TRS I think or something, to XLR. And you're going to say, what are you doing with these adapters? Well, let me tell you this. When you have your patch cords, right over here, when you have your patch cords and you get on that makeshift stage with all the rental equipment, because I'm not a professional, they usually don't have that many slots for these bad boys here. And so for them, they're always, you know, you can tell they're running special cables or doing me a favor. They're, you know, they have a separate direct boxes, which is for ground lifting, and they run a super long cable to the board, and they're trying to help me out because I'm a keyboardist. I'm not a guitarist. And I think guitarist goes through their pedals, and there's other cool things that they do that can come out as an XLR. So what I did was I bought these adapters, and what I essentially do is basically flip this in, and now I have an XLR cable. So now I can go on the Snake, and they'll have this big box, and I could just plug in, and I'll say, okay, Chris, plug in on 10 and 11. And yeah, so that's what I do with these. And I'm going to pack it up probably in a nicer way. I also always bring an extra mic cable just in case, because they do provide some cables. Usually when they rent stuff, they have these super long boom stands. And this here, of course, is what I showed you in my other video that actually is a boom that screws into my keyboard stand. So I have my favorite mic, a TC Helicon, and it's an MP75. For me, the range is amazing. It actually falls into like the Shure Beta type range. So yeah, and it came with its own little case, and I protect it. And so that's it. So for this jam, I'm taking this stand with me. And this will be the one on stage. And this guy here is a ultimate support keyboard stand. And it comes with its own bag. I got a super great deal on this a few years back. And I find the stand very, very, very stable. Now, you may look at the stand and say, why is this guy putting red tape here and some orange stuff here? What the heck's all that about? Well, I found that the CK61, sorry Yamaha, but it's not even and it doesn't sit well on the stand. And there's nothing wrong with this stand. The stand is really high end. It's got these removable bars, and you'll notice there's a little, see the foam? Yeah, it's awesome. It's perfectly straight. However, the keyboard's not. So when you put the keyboard on it, when it's just the piece without this thing here, it actually tilts back and forth. You're playing and the thing is moving around. So I'm not sure what happened and what the deal is with that, but this is a standard stand, and that keyboard should not wobble on a perfectly flat surface, but it is. So what I ended up doing is I added some felt, you know, the stuff you put under a chair, and then I used electrical tape and I put it all around it. Now, why is it red? Well, it's the only tape I had at the time, but it did the job, and the keyboard got a little bit of a lift. We're talking about maybe this much, and it was enough to make the keyboard stop wobbling. So that's another beef I have with the keyboard, is the wobbling. What to do, you know, I don't understand. For this guy here, well, for this configuration here, I did this for the video that I did where I'm actually sitting down. I like to play keyboard standing up. So what I did was, it's a marker so that I can raise this bad boy until it gets to this point. And for me, as a keyboardist that likes to stand up, it's the perfect height. So we're going to take this stand here and we're going to put it in that bag. So at this point, I'm putting everything away into this bag. I take this guy here and put him as low as I can. These screws out by hand, which is kind of cool. They make it pretty simple. Now you'll notice something about this. See this little label here? One thing, when you go to a jam and other people like-minded like yourself have equipment, sometimes people forget their stuff because they don't know which cable is which owns what. I put white stickers with KC on everything I own so that it's clearly visible. And I slide out the bars right here. This guy here, it folds. So now you have yourself a straight bar. And I slide this guy in here like that, into the back. It is a little bit cumbersome at first, but it slides in pretty good. Like putting a pair of pants, you know? Everything should go in nicely, and it does. So this piece here goes right in the middle. So it's out of the way. And slide it in, right in the bag. And these little guys go on each side. Here, and here. I'm ready to go. One of the most important things is my iPad stand. So for my iPad stand, which is this guy right here, I bought a cheap stand and I put a head for it, and I'll show you. So this guy here, and of course you can see the white tape. See the white tape right there too, it's mine. It's one of those stands that you clamp on. And originally the one that I had was a little ball thing. And I think I dropped an iPad, or I caught it as it was coming down. And I kind of said, well, I'm not going to use that anymore. And I got one of these. And these are great because they slide like this and they grab your iPad. I'll show you. This is the guy I take with me. So this is my broadcast station. So it actually safely goes on every corner, and then you can have your iPad for your lyrics and things. And that's what I use it for. So this is the stand that I kind of have the same for this guy right here. So this guy here, I'll pack it up and collapse it. It's very cheap. You can get a stand like this for maybe 20 bucks, 25 bucks. But I'd recommend, if you get one, maybe get a newer with this kind of head on it, because I think you can get those. Trust me, your $1,000 iPad will thank you. So that's it. So this is going to come with me as well. We're going to take that down. I won't show you going taking it down because it's pretty obvious how we do it. And so let's move on to the next stuff. So when I travel, I kind of like these headphones. So these headphones, believe it or not, they are Sony MDR V150s. Now, they've been around for a long time. So I found these at a thrift store, and they are MDR V150s. and they're like little workhorses, and I kind of like them. And they have a super long cable, and they're meant for the purpose of music. And it's a heavy duty cable, and I paid $1 for these, and I couldn't believe it. It happens, you know. You find cool stuff, and I use this when I want to practice, and I want a bit more of a dynamic sound. That's a little more, like I find that the sound that comes out of these are like monitors. They're pretty dry. And I don't want anything that's over boosted with bass or whatever. These will do the job very, very, very well. So those are the headphones. They're coming with me as well. I'll put this over here so I don't forget them. So for this particular jam, I'm bringing these speakers that I'm going to use them as floor monitors, just in case I don't get enough coverage. Because I'm driving instead of flying, I figured I got room. So I got these cheap amplified speakers from Monoprice. And they have like a backing on them that comes off. Let me show you. And you see it's the mixer. And the other one is actually, looks the same, right? But it is storage where you have your cables in there. And of course, my little custom foams that I created to make them become like wedges, because they are not wedges. A wedge, like right now, if you put the speaker this way, it's shooting a certain, but when you're performing and you're standing up on your keyboard, you want the speakers to be a little more angled up. Here, boom. And to me, that's perfect. The speakers are not very bassy, like they would say. They're very dry, and they're very mid-level, but that's perfect because you're getting your bass from the fronts, you're getting the back of your speakers, and this will just work perfectly. If I don't have to use them, I won't, but I'm going to bring them anyways. This is the point where I pack up the MODX6 into this case. Now, this is not set up the way you would expect. The way I did it was for two purposes. Have something convenient for me to off the stage, put it in a bag, bring it with me to another location, and also protect it as much as I could from flying. So what I do with this keyboard, instead of having the keyboard sitting right in it, so you'll see inside I have a Yamaha MODX bag. And under the bag, I have my little setup here where I'm going to take the music stand right here and disassemble it and put it in there. All under 50 pounds. It's been to a few jams and it survived. So this case here is beautiful. The bag that comes with the keyboard, I suggest you get one. If you have an MODX6 and you do stuff with it, get the one that comes with it. You'll find that it's really well designed, and I think it's well worth the money, to be perfectly honest. All right. So now the first thing I got to do is I got to take apart this stand here. keyboard. So what I do is I take the bag. You can put the keyboard in there beforehand, but for this example, keyboard inside the bag. So it's nice and protected in its own bag. So it's kind of like a protection within a protection. Zip it up, take it, put it in like this, put the strap in like this. You basically close it. And you're good. And your keyboard is ready for travel. That's how I do it for this guy here. And it's ready to go.